The stars had never felt so quiet. Far beyond Earth's blue atmosphere, a sleek warship sliced through the void, its dark hull swallowing the light of distant suns. On board, the Threxari, the galaxy's apex predators, prepared for their next conquest. For centuries, their claws had crushed worlds without mercy. Their reputation was carved into the bones of dying civilizations, fearless, brutal, and unstoppable. Commander Cathrak stood at the observation deck, his scaled hands clenched around the cold railing. Below, Earth spun lazily, a fragile blue orb swathed in clouds. It was the next prize, the next snack. He had watched the broadcasts from the surface, listened to the strange human signals crackling through space. Primitive creatures, disorganized, emotional, weak, easy to break, Cathrak thought. The ship dropped from hyperspace, slipping into Earth's orbit like a shadow stalking prey. Below, the planet was a tangle of sprawling cities, endless forests, and turbulent seas. The Threxari did not know that Earth's chaos was a crucible for the most dangerous hunters of all. Cathrak's first strike team, 20 of his fiercest warriors, descended silently in a squadron of stealth pods. Their mission was simple: scout, assess, conquer. The humans would surrender or flee. The Threxari would teach them fear. The pods pierced the atmosphere, flashing through clouds and settling in the outskirts of a sprawling megacity. The team spread out, moving like shadows through twisted steel and shattered glass. The streets were eerily quiet, an unnatural stillness gripping the concrete jungle. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A sharp crack, then another. A dozen Threxari fell in moments, ripped apart by unseen assailants. The humans didn't fight with clean blades or coordinated formations. They fought dirty, brutal, and wild. Fireworks exploded overhead as improvised explosives lit the night, and piercing howls echoed from the shadows. Cathrak's second strike team arrived too late. They found only death and disarray. The few survivors spoke of hunters who vanished into smoke, who laughed as they struck, who danced in the dark like ghosts. The word spread quickly through the Threxari ranks. Humans were mad, reckless, unpredictable. Madness, Cathrak thought, a disease to be cured with fire. But madness had teeth. Within days, the humans intensified their resistance. Entire city blocks became traps, streets rigged with explosives, buildings wired to collapse on invaders, and endless tunnels where humans disappeared only to reappear behind enemy lines. The Threxari, used to being the hunters, were now the hunted. One patrol vanished without a trace in an abandoned subway. Another was lured into a warehouse only to be pinned down by a swarm of tiny drones that buzzed like angry hornets before exploding in showers of sparks and debris. Worst of all were the humans' voices. From the darkness came laughter, wild, mocking, and terrifying. It echoed through ruins, bouncing off broken walls like a chorus of ghosts. The predators found it unbearable. It was the laughter of creatures who stared death in the face and spat. Cathrak summoned his commanders. They fight like beast-possessed, hissed Lieutenant Valak, his eyes glowing red. They do not fear us, they do not fear death. Then they are not prey, Cathrak said grimly. They are hunters. The warship's sensors picked up a broadcast from the surface, a crude, grainy transmission that showed a group of humans waving a tattered flag made from scraps of metal and fabric. They laughed openly into the camera, their eyes burning with feral joy. The message was clear. We will never be your victims. Cathrak's mind raced. The humans were more dangerous than any species the Threxari had faced. They lacked discipline, but made up for it with chaos, unpredictability, and what the Threxari could only describe as insanity. But insanity could be broken, and Cathrak would be the one to break it. The war was just beginning. The night was a tapestry of chaos, stitched with bursts of light and sharp, jagged sounds. Deep in the ruins of a once glorious city, humanity's fighters prepared for battle, not with the polished precision of an alien war machine, but with raw, relentless spirit. In a narrow alleyway cluttered with debris, Mara checked her battered rifle, eyes scanning the darkness beyond. Around her, dozens of fighters crouched, ready to strike. Their weapons were crude, salvaged metal, homemade explosives, hacked drones, but their hearts beat with a ferocity no Threxari beast could match. "Tonight, we hunt," Mara whispered, voice low but fierce. "Not as prey, not as victims, as warriors." Her squad exchanged nods, faces smudged with dirt and determination. They had learned the predator's weaknesses through bitter experience. The Threxari fought with cold precision, counting on fear and discipline to crush resistance. But humans thrived in chaos. Their greatest weapon wasn't firepower, it was unpredictability. The squad slipped through shadows, moving like smoke. At the edge of the Threxari supply convoy, a heavily armored line of alien vehicles humming with energy, Mara's team sprang their trap. Explosions ripped through the night. Improvised charges detonated under the convoy's wheels, sending sparks flying. The Threxari warriors scrambled, snarling as they sought the invisible enemy. But every time they fired, their targets had vanished, replaced by echoes of laughter. Laughter. It was the sound that haunted the predators most. From the rubble, humans emerged like ghosts, taunting the invaders with wild cries and jeers, their voices cracked with adrenaline and defiance ringing through the wreckage. "Come and get us, you'll have to catch us first." A Threxari officer, his scales gleaming in the firelight, bellowed orders, but his troops were disoriented. Their laser rifles flashed blindly into the darkness, striking empty air. The humans darted between cover, their movements erratic but precise, making it impossible to predict their next strike. Mara felt the rush of the fight, heart pounding, breath ragged, as she tossed a smoke grenade into the enemy's flank. When the thick cloud rolled over the battlefield, the humans vanished like shadows melting into the night. Behind enemy lines, they struck again. A hacked drone buzzed overhead, its sensors scrambled to malfunction, confusing the Threxari defenses. As it exploded among their ranks, Mara's team surged forward, knives flashing, grappling fiercely with the stunned predators. Blood and metal clashed in a brutal ballet. Humans fought not just with weapons, but with screams and laughter. Psychological, weapons honed by desperation and centuries of survival. The Threxari soldiers, bred to be cold and ruthless, found themselves unnerved by the raw emotion in their opponent's eyes. Amid the chaos, Mara caught sight of a Threxari warrior frozen in terror, clutching a wounded comrade. The human didn't hesitate. She reached out, dragging the injured alien to safety rather than striking the killing blow. It was a moment that confused the Threxari more than any weapon. Humans fought fiercely, yes, but they also fought with something else. Compassion. For their fallen, for their allies, even for enemies. The battle ended with the Threxari retreating, their ranks shattered and spirits broken. The humans didn't pursue. Instead, they laughed, wild, triumphant, echoing through the city ruins like a declaration. Back at their hidden base, Mara removed her helmet and let the laughter die. The victory was small but meaningful, a statement that Earth's warriors would not be crushed. Each fight was a message to the galaxy's apex predators. Humanity was not prey. In a dim corner, a communications officer played back intercepted Threxari transmissions. The alien voices trembled with frustration and fear, repeating a chilling phrase. The humans laugh as they fight. That laughter was their greatest weapon. Mara's commander approached, a grim smile on his face. They expected us to break. They didn't expect us to enjoy the fight. She nodded. They think we're crazy. Maybe we are, he said, but crazy is hard to kill. As dawn broke over the shattered cityscape, the humans gathered around makeshift fires, sharing stories of the night's battle. They spoke of lost friends and narrow escapes, but never of surrender. Their spirit was unbreakable. Far above, the Threxari warship orbited silently. Commander Cathrak stared down at the planet, his pride wounded but his resolve hardening. The humans were more than savages. They were a threat unlike any he'd faced. The laughing warriors, he muttered. They will be the death of us, or the Reckoning of the Galaxy. The war for Earth had become a war of wills, and the predators were beginning to understand. This was no ordinary hunt. It was a war against madness, and in madness, humans had found their strength. Inside the cavernous command bridge of the Skarnath, the Threxari warship orbiting Earth, a tense silence held sway. Commander Kethrak stood before the holoscreen, its flickering blue light casting sharp shadows across his scaly face. Around him, his senior officers murmured in frustration, struggling to explain how a species they deemed primitive could repeatedly outmaneuver their elite warriors. Reports flooded in from the surface, ambushes sprung from nowhere, disappearances of entire squads, unorthodox weapons that defied known technology. Worse still, the humans weren't just surviving, they were striking back, and laughing while doing it. Kethrak's sharp eyes scanned the data streams, reading battle logs, intercepted communications, and footage captured by reconnaissance drones. The humans' chaotic tactics seemed at first a weakness, but the more he studied, the clearer it became. This unpredictability was a form of strategy, honed from desperation and hardened through countless trials. This disorder, Kethrak began, voice low and deadly calm, is not weakness. It is an adaptive behavior. Lieutenant Velak stepped forward, scales bristling with impatience. Commander, we have tried to bring them into submission, fear, intimidation, slaughter. Yet they refuse to break. Their defiance borders on madness. Kethrak nodded slowly. Madness is merely the edge of a razor. It can cut both ways. The holoscreen shifted, displaying a grainy recording of a captured human prisoner, a wiry man with wild eyes and a crooked smile. He spat in the face of his Threxari captors, refusing to show fear or remorse. Kethrak's gaze hardened. They fight not just with weapons but with their minds. This prisoner's defiance infects others. It undermines our authority. Psychological warfare, mused Velak. Perhaps we have underestimated the human mind. Kethrak's lips curled into a thin, sharp smile. Then it is time we learn to use their madness against them. He ordered an elite interrogation unit to prepare. Their mission, capture a human, break their will, and use them as a weapon of fear and control. But the prisoner they chose was unlike any other, a young woman named Sela, renowned among humans for her fierce spirit and unyielding resolve. She was brought aboard the Skarnath, shackled but still defiant, her eyes blazing with a fire that refused to dim. The interrogators employed every tool: sensory deprivation, mind probes, chemical, agents designed to erode sanity. But Sela endured, laughing through the pain, mocking her captors with biting words. Her resilience was more than physical. It was infectious. Other prisoners began echoing her defiance, their morale surging despite the odds. The Threxari realized they had underestimated the human capacity for hope, for unity even in captivity. One officer, disturbed by this, whispered to Kethrak, "Their spirit. It is alien to us. They do not fear death. They embrace it, almost celebrate it." Kethrak stood silently, contemplating the paradox. The apex predators of the galaxy had never faced prey that thrived on chaos, whose insanity was a weapon, sharper than any blade. Meanwhile, on Earth, human resistance leaders watched news filtered through underground networks. Sela's capture was a rallying cry, her courage a beacon in the darkness. They plotted a daring rescue, knowing that if the Threxari succeeded in breaking her, the war could be lost. But the humans had learned something else from their battles. Fear was a weapon they wielded too. They began broadcasting hacked transmissions directly into Threxari channels, distorted laughter, whispered threats, and chilling stories of human fighters who had survived impossible odds, often against brutal torture. The message was clear: we are not afraid. We are not broken. Back on the Skarnath, Kethrak tightened his grip on the railing, the weight of the fight settling over him. The humans were not just animals to be hunted. They were a puzzle, a storm of chaos and order tangled into one unpredictable force. To defeat them, we must become more than hunters. We must become something else. The war had changed. It was no longer a simple conquest. It was a battle for survival against an enemy that refused to be caged by logic or fear. Cathrak turned to his officers, voice cold steel. Prepare for new strategies. We will break the humans, not with brute force, but with their own madness. As the Skarnath slipped silently over the darkened planet, the first true understanding dawned. In this war, the predator was hunted, and the prey was becoming a legend. Beneath the fractured ruins of a shattered city, deep in tunnels and catacombs abandoned long before the war, humanity's fighters gathered like veins pulsing with life. The war had transformed them, stripped away old divisions, and forged a new unity born from survival. Here in the belly of a broken world, the pulse of resistance beat strongest. Mara stood at the center of a dimly lit room, surrounded by scientists, engineers, and former soldiers who had learned to wield enemy technology, like extensions of their own bodies. They called themselves the Heartbeat. In front of her, a holographic map flickered, showing Threxari patrol routes, supply lines, and vulnerable outposts. The humans had learned to read the enemy's movements, but more importantly, to anticipate their reactions. They were no longer reacting, they were shaping the battlefield. Every day, Mara said, voice steady, the predators grow more afraid of us. We've turned their own tools against them. EMP grenades that blind their sensors, hacked drones that sow confusion in their ranks, and weapons adapted from their own designs. A technician nodded. We even found a way to trigger their ships, self-defense systems remotely. They're shooting at their own now. Good, Mara replied. Because the Threxari don't just fight with claws and lasers. They fight with fear. If we can make them doubt every step, every shadow, we control the hunt. Outside the underground stronghold, the city above lay silent and dangerous. Every ruined street was a potential battlefield. Every shadow could hide an enemy or a trap. Yet the humans moved like ghosts, their movements unpredictable and relentless. On the surface, small bands of fighters staged hit-and-run attacks on supply convoys and communication arrays. They used guerrilla tactics that defied logic, attacking at dawn, disappearing into the fog, then striking again at midnight. To the Threxari, this was madness, but to humans it was survival, and the sound of the heartbeat growing stronger. One such raid was led by a young commander named Jax. His squad was small but deadly, moving with the silent precision of hunters who knew their prey well. Tonight's target was a heavily fortified Threxari supply depot, a critical node for the enemy's operations. Jax's team approached under cover of darkness, weaving through broken streets and collapsed buildings. As they neared the depot, their comms hummed with static. Remember, Jax whispered, we're not just attacking a building, we're striking at their confidence. Make it count. With a nod, they set explosives and hacked into the depot's systems. Suddenly, alarms blared and Threxari guards poured out, weapons raised. The battle erupted in chaos, blaster fire, screams, and the sharp clang of metal. But the humans didn't falter. They used the depot's own security systems against the defenders, turning automated turrets on the enemy. Smoke grenades clouded the air, masking their movements. Jax found himself face to face with a towering Threxari warrior. The predator struck first, fast, precise, deadly. But Jax dodged, rolling beneath the alien's claws, and plunged his knife deep into a vulnerable joint. As the predator fell, Jax heard the distant sound of laughter, human laughter rising above the chaos. It was a sound the Threxari could not understand, a sound born of defiance and raw joy in the face of death. The depot was destroyed, supplies lost, and morale shattered. The Threxari would have to divert troops to repair the damage, stretching their forces thin. Back in the underground, Mara received the news. She allowed herself a rare smile. This, she said, is the heartbeat of humanity. Unpredictable, relentless, and unbreakable. The war was no longer just about weapons or tactics. It was about spirit. Every victory, every act of defiance, echoed through the resistance like a pulse in the dark, reminding them all why they fought. Meanwhile, aboard the Skarnath, Commander Cathrak studied the reports with growing unease. The humans were not just fighting harder. They were evolving, adapting faster than any species he'd encountered. He barked orders to his strategists. We must find the source of their strength and cut it out. They fight with madness, yes, but madness has limits. One of his advisors hesitated. Commander, their strength is not just madness. It is unity, hope, and something deeply alien to us. The human heartbeat is a force beyond calculation. Cathrak's eyes narrowed. Then we will find a way to silence it. But deep inside, a question gnawed at him. Can a predator truly kill a heartbeat? The answer would come soon enough, because humanity was no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to become a legend. The dawn sky over the Threxari's forward base burned with fire and smoke. The humans had come not as victims, but as a force of reckoning. Commander Cathrak's elite warriors gathered on the jagged cliffs overlooking the encampment. They were the fiercest predators the galaxy had known, apex hunters bred for dominance. Their scales shimmered in the harsh light, their eyes cold and calculating. Yet for the first time, doubt crept into their ranks. The humans were no longer hiding. They struck openly, boldly, even in the heart of the predator's domain. Mara led the assault, her squad moving like a storm unleashed. The enemy had expected fear, retreat, anything but the wild onslaught that greeted them. Explosions shattered watchtowers, hacked drones swarmed the defenders, and waves of fighters crashed against the Threxari lines. But the apex predators would not fall easily. Cathrak roared a command, rallying his troops into a deadly counterattack. The ground trembled as the Threxari charged, claws flashing, teeth bared. Their battle cries echoed like thunder, shaking the very air. The clash was brutal. Steel met claw, laser met blade. The humans fought with desperation and cunning, turning the terrain itself into a weapon, collapsing bridges, rigging caves with explosives, and retreating only to trap their pursuers in narrow choke points. Amid the chaos, Mara faced Cathrak himself. The predator was a towering figure, his power and rage almost overwhelming. Their duel was a brutal dance, each strike blocked or dodged, each move a test of will and strength. Mara's rifle was empty. She dropped it and drew a combat knife, its edge gleaming. Cathrak laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed the confidence of a predator certain of victory. But Mara smiled back, fearless. "You've hunted the galaxy," she said between breaths, "but you never faced us." Their blades met, sparks flying. Suddenly, behind Cathrak, the ground exploded. A squad of human fighters emerged from a hidden tunnel, their weapons blazing. The predator snarled, forced to defend himself on multiple fronts. The battle turned. Cathrak's forces faltered, overwhelmed by the humans' unyielding assault and their unexpected allies. Species that once cowered beneath Threxari rule now fought alongside humanity. The galaxy's most feared predators were being broken. Retreat was called, but it was disorderly. Threxari warriors fled through crumbling tunnels and collapsing caves, hunted by the very prey they had once scorned. Mara watched from a ridge, breath heavy but eyes bright. The apex predator was wounded, humiliated, not by brute force alone, but by a coalition of willpower, unity, and fierce defiance. The victory was more than tactical. It was symbolic. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The apex predators could be broken. Back aboard the Skarnath, Cathrak's pride shattered like glass. His fury burned hot, but beneath it a cold realization settled. The humans had changed the rules. They fought not just to survive, but to reclaim the galaxy. His voice was a low growl as he addressed his war council. "This war is no longer ours to win by strength alone. We must adapt or perish." Among his advisors, unease grew. For the first time, the legend of Threxari invincibility was questioned. But in the heart of the resistance, hope blossomed. Mara's victory was a beacon, lighting the way for others. The humans had not just survived the apex, they had begun to break it. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The war that had once seemed inevitable began to change course. The legends of the Threxari, fearless, ruthless apex predators, were no longer accepted without question. Across the galaxy, the echoes of their defeat at the hands of humans spread, like wildfire, igniting hope in worlds long shadowed by their reign. On Earth, the resistance was swelling. Fighters from scattered factions and conquered planets streamed into the underground hubs, each drawn by the promise of survival and freedom. Mara stood on a makeshift platform before a sea of faces, her voice steady and fierce. "We've proven the impossible is possible. The predators can be broken. They can be beaten. But this is only the beginning. The true fight is ahead." The crowd erupted in cheers, the human heartbeat pounding stronger than ever. Far above, the Skarnath trembled under the weight of defeat. Commander Kithrak's face was a mask of rage and frustration as he reviewed fresh intelligence. The humans had captured a critical outpost, disrupting supply lines and communications. His forces were stretched thin, their morale fracturing. In a rare moment of reflection, Kithrak summoned his closest advisors. "The humans fight with madness, yes, but they are not mindless. Their strength is unity, resilience, and unpredictability. We must become more than hunters. We must become strategists." Valak, ever the skeptic, growled, "But how do we fight an enemy who laughs in the face of death and bends every rule we know?" Kithrak's eyes glinted with cold resolve. "We adapt, we learn from them, and we strike where they least expect." As the Skarnath prepared for a new offensive, the humans moved quickly to capitalize on their momentum. Jax led a daring raid into the heart of a Threxari command center, hacking security systems and gathering vital data. His team moved with practiced efficiency, slipping past patrols and neutralizing guards without raising alarms. Inside the command core, Jax hacked into the ship's communication grid, broadcasting a message across enemy channels. The predators are no longer invincible. The hunters have become the hunted. Surrender or be broken. The broadcast sent shockwaves through the Threxari ranks. Fear, unfamiliar and unwelcome, began to take root. Back on Earth, Mara coordinated defenses as Threxari retaliated with brutal strikes aimed at crushing the growing rebellion. Entire districts burned, but the humans stood firm, turning destruction into resolve. In a small command post, Sela, recently rescued from captivity, monitored battle reports, her sharp mind already planning the next moves. "We're not just fighting to survive anymore," she told Mara. "We're fighting to reclaim our place in the stars." Mara nodded. "The Threxari underestimated us. They thought we'd break. Instead, we found strength in what makes us human. Our chaos, our courage, our heart." The war was evolving into something neither side fully understood. The Threxari were predators by instinct, yet forced to reconsider their tactics in the face of human unpredictability. The humans were survivors by nature, yet becoming hunters in their own right, fierce, relentless, and united. Kithrak paced the bridge of the Skarnath, a predator learning humility. "This war will not be won by claws or teeth alone," he admitted quietly. "It will be won by the mind that can outthink madness." The Skarnath shifted into a new mode, deploying specialized units designed to counter human guerrilla tactics. New weapons hummed with unfamiliar energy, and soldiers trained to mimic the humans' chaotic fighting style. But even as the apex predator adapted, the humans were already moving beyond survival. They had become legends, symbols of defiance, lighting a fire across the galaxy. And with every battle won, every territory reclaimed, the human heartbeat grew louder, stronger, unstoppable. The war had become a tempest, fierce, unpredictable, and all-consuming. Across the shattered landscapes of Earth and the stars beyond, humanity's heartbeat pounded louder than ever, a relentless drumbeat echoing through the chaos. Mara stood on the ridge overlooking the latest battlefield. The sky was torn with smoke and fire, and the air hummed with the charge of energy weapons. Around her, squads moved like shadows, swift, silent, deadly. Every human fighter was a spark in the storm. Behind her, a newly built communications array hummed softly. It was their lifeline, a way to coordinate attacks and share intelligence in real time across continents and colonies. Every pulse of data carried hope and strategy, weaving together scattered resistance into a unified force. "We strike here," Mara commanded, pointing to a glowing point on the map, a Threxari weapons depot crucial to their supply chain. "Cut off their resources and the apex predators begin to starve." The plan was bold. The depot was heavily guarded, nestled in the ruins of a city still smoldering from previous battles. But the humans had something the Threxari lacked, the willingness to fight on every front, to turn desperation into advantage. Jax approached, his face grim but resolute. "We've got a team ready for the infiltration. Stealth, speed, and chaos, just like always." Mara nodded. "Good. But this time we're hitting their command center too. If we take out their leadership, the whole war shifts." Meanwhile, aboard the Skarnath, Commander Kuthrak's temper flared. The humans were striking deeper into his territory than ever before. His elite squads, trained to anticipate every human move, found themselves outmatched by sheer unpredictability. His advisors brought reports of infiltrations, sabotage, and mass desertions. Even some Threxari soldiers whispered doubts, their faith in invincibility shattered by constant defeat. Kuthrak growled, pacing the bridge. "If we lose the depot, we lose everything. I want a counterstrike, full force. Show these humans that predators don't break." But the war was no longer simply about force, it was about heart. As Jax's infiltration team slipped through the shadows toward the depot, they faced every nightmare the predators could throw at them. Automated defenses, surprise patrols, and deadly traps. Yet their determination never wavered. Inside the depot, the humans moved with quiet precision, disabling energy cores and planting explosives. Every second brought them closer to victory. Suddenly, alarms blared. A Threxari squad poured into the chamber, claws flashing. The fight exploded into brutal close-quarters combat. Jax found himself face-to-face with a warrior twice his size. The predator's eyes burned with fury and disbelief. "You think you can break the apex?" The warrior snarled. Jax smiled grimly. "We don't just break it, we shatter it." Blades clashed, sparks flew, and amidst the chaos, the detonator in Jax's hand clicked. Outside, the communications array picked up the signal. The explosion rocked the battlefield. The depot was no more. Simultaneously, Mara led an assault on the Threxari command center, cutting down guards and hacking into systems. The enemy's coordination faltered as their nerve center fell into chaos. On the ridge, Mara watched the battlefield shift. The apex predators were losing control. Their reign of terror was unraveling. In the depths of the Skarnath, Commander Kuthrak clenched his fists, rage and respect battling inside him. The humans were no longer prey. They were the storm, the heart of the storm, and no predator, no matter how fearless, could stand against it forever. The final battle was not fought on the shattered fields of Earth, nor in the depths of the Threxari strongholds, but in the hearts and minds of all who had survived. It was a war for legacy, a clash between a dying era of predators and the dawn of a new age shaped by the indomitable human spirit. Commander Kuthrak stood before the remnants of his fleet, battered and diminished, the weight of defeat pressing heavily on his massive frame. The apex predators, once feared across countless galaxies, had been brought low, not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by something far more elusive, the relentless courage and chaotic brilliance of humanity. The humans had become legends, fearless apex predators in their own right, not because of claws or teeth, but because of heart and unyielding will. Mara and her fighters gathered in the ruins of what had once been the Threxari capital on Earth, now a symbol of a hard-fought victory. Their bodies bore the scars of countless battles, but their eyes burned with an unquenchable fire. This war tested everything we believed about ourselves. Mara addressed the weary but hopeful crowd. We faced monsters who saw us as prey. They hunted us for sport. But we did not break. We adapted. We fought with madness and method, chaos and courage. We became the predators they never expected. Around her, the survivors, humans, allied species, and former captives cheered. The galaxy was listening. The tale of humanity's rise echoed across star systems, inspiring countless others to stand against tyranny. In the War Council chambers, Kithrak spoke softly to his officers. "We have been defeated not by strength but by something we could never understand. Human resilience, their heartbeat. This is a lesson we must carry forward, or be forgotten." The Threxari, once the apex of the predator hierarchy, were forced to reconsider their place in the cosmos. Their pride tempered, they began tentative talks of peace, a gesture unheard of before in their history. Sela, standing beside Mara, reflected on the journey from prisoner to hero. "They thought they could break me, but it was we who broke the cycle of fear. Our madness became our strength, our unity became our shield." Jax, wiping sweat and grime from his face, added, "We didn't just survive, we thrived. We proved that being fearless isn't about the absence of fear, it's about facing it head on and refusing to back down." As peace negotiations began, between humans and the Threxari, the galaxy looked on with cautious hope. The era of apex predators ruling through fear was ending. A new era, defined by unexpected strength and fearless hearts, was beginning. The legacy of humanity was clear. In the vastness of the galaxy, it was not the fiercest claws or sharpest teeth that mattered most, but the courage to stand when all odds were against you, the madness to defy the impossible, and the heartbeat that refused to be silenced. From the ashes of war rose a legend that would be told for generations. The fearless apex predators of the galaxy were no match for humans, and humanity was just getting started.